Hey, Maggie, don't forget recording.
Great, we're recording. Okay, well, welcome everybody. We are in meeting mode again. Why am I doing meeting mode? Well, honestly, I would rather see your faces than just Katrina's. As much as I love her, I like seeing all of your faces too, so that I can see your nonverbal reactions when we're talking. And I'll ask for some more hands to be raised, and you can use your reactions. So go ahead and go down to your reactions button and tell us how you're feeling today with one of the fun reactions that are down there, so we can make sure that you're seeing it. So while I'm go ahead and give me a thumbs up in your profile reactions if you attended the session I did last Wednesday with Phyllis. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you were here. Okay, excellent. Can anybody put in the chat? Go ahead and use the chat and tell me what we talked about last Wednesday. What was our topic of conversation last Wednesday? Anybody remember? This is fun. I do like being in this mode so that I can see your faces and I can tell when you're typing. You're so intent. I know we've got some folks that have the answers over here. What did we talk about last week? Katrina, do you remember what Phyllis and I talked about last week?
No. I'm worthless to you.
And in meeting. Okay. I'll give you the answer. I'll give you the answer. Last Wednesday, Phyllis and I started. Oh, look at that. Maren has all the notes from last week. I love it. That's so good. Lots of notes. Okay. So you know what it was. This is the month of back to school. And as a part of the back to school webinars that we're all doing, what is going to be most useful for you all? The goal really is, instead of just talking theory about the things that we discuss all the time, we wanted to have more of conversation this month. So what did it look like to actually have a conversation with your seller last week about the seller options through the Allen Tate Advantage? That's what we talked about last week. Conversating with the seller, asking the right questions, and giving them the choices. This week, I have Katrina here, and she teaches our pricing analysis during Winter's Edge for us. Katrina Richards is our regional vice president in the South of Charlotte, South Charlotte and South Carolina offices. And during Winter's Edge, she does teach the pricing analysis, and she does such a fantastic job. I said, can you come join me for this more in-depth conversation on the art of the conversation with seller, not just the science? Do y'all see the difference? The science is about the numbers and having your CMA ready and doing pluses and minuses and pulling trends. And today it's really going to be a little touch on that, but really a lot more about the art, which is having the conversation with the seller. Is everybody good with that? So good, Jackie. Glad you are back with us again this week. Feel free to use the chat as Katrina and I are going through this presentation. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you. I do ask that you'll keep yourself muted just so we don't have any background noise as we get started. So if you have any questions, put it in the chat or raise your hand. We'll see it and we'll stop periodically to see if there's any questions. If you'll remember last week from the presentation, I started out with this. Yoda's just too cute, even though this is a different digital form. This is about the guide. We always think of Yoda as being the guide. And we want to make sure that we are always helping our client to be the hero and we're the guide. We want them to be the hero. We are not the hero. And have you ever worked with an agent that's acted like they are the hero? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Katrina, for that. So yes, we could work with agents that act like they're the hero, but really we know we are the guide and we want our client to be the hero. So here's what we're going to look at this week about being the guide. Number one is ask the right questions. Too often we have worked so hard to gather all the information and make it look just right. We're so excited about showing it to our seller that we forget to slow down and ask the right questions. And then we can be prepared to give the right answer or to guide them through the process. But first we want to ask the right questions. We want to make sure that we're going to start on a macro level and then zoom into the micro level and make sure that we're educating them on the market. And then if we are educating them on what's happening as close to today as possible, and we can set the proper expectations up front, then we know that we're going to be able to help them to make the right decision. And we're going to guide them through the decision-making process. Something that's important to recognize, and this is a ninja saying, which is, it matters who says it. It matters who says it. So if we just tell them what we think and they go, okay, what if we tell them where to list their home and it stays on the market for 3 weeks without any offers? Who are they going to blame? That's it. That's it. But if they set the price based on the great education, then they're going to own that price and they're going to be willing to talk to you about, do we make an adjustment? And when we can set those right expectations. Okay. So that's how we want to be the guide. Now, how can we prepare? Katrina, do you want to take this or do you want me to?
No, I'd love to. I'd love to. So I think this talks a little bit more on the micro level than the macro level, not the big picture, but about what is going to be true for the home that they are selling. So as we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit. I think I can't make it move. Oh, yes, I can. So it's all important about what we tell. And Maggie's going to talk a little bit about the story that we tell. And then we're going to get into 3 specific things that we want you all to think about when you're going out to talk to your sellers first. So Maggie, you take this one and I'll move on.
Okay, so the story we tell, I think I feel like this has come up quite a bit, Katrina, lately, is what is the story that we tell ourselves? So have we had an experience recently with a listing that took a lot longer than expected, or maybe it was still really fast? And sometimes that can shape the way that we see that the things are happening currently in the market. Or you've heard it, we've been having a lot of conversation across our entire leadership and meetings and team about how it's going into a more balanced market. We want to make sure that that is true for their home. So yes, we want to have those conversations, but before you jump into all of the great talking points that you've heard from Tony Jarrett, because he's got a bunch of good ones, make sure that that's actually true for their home when you're getting into the micro. So let's look at this. You want to make sure that we're looking at current trends in their market, What about the last 30 days? So one thing that's tough is we can look at trends, but what are trends? Trends are in the past and they're usually at least 30 plus days, sometimes a quarter or 2 quarters behind, depending on what it is we're looking for. Has the market changed a lot in the last 15 days, 30 days? So we want to be careful that if we're only looking at the trends that are from 2 months ago, things can be different today. What is their current competition? So let's look at what's happening today. When you're new to the market, are you making your neighbor look better? Or are you going to be the next one that goes under contract? And when we're looking at current competition, let's look at the resale, but folks, don't forget new construction. I heard Lynn Goodman yesterday saying we're seeing new construction homes that the contracts are falling through. It's year end for these builders. And so you could see some homes right now that might have some good pricing on them. It can be the competition. It can be the competition.
And I want to throw in another one on top of that too, as we talk through this. Let's start thinking as the market shifts, we may start to see some estate sales, right? We may start to see some distress sales, some foreclosures, short sales. All of that's going to come into play when we're talking in our micro market and how we want to position the property that you're getting ready to list.
Excellent. Good. So that's a really good point, Katrina. You want to talk about some of the questions that we should be asking?
Yes, I would love to. So I think the biggest thing with questions and one of the hardest things to learn how to do is to ask open-ended questions, right? If some of us have had some experience on phone duty, we've had to learn how to ask open-ended questions. That means more than just a yes and a no, right? It's going to give us a lot more information. And a good way to know you're asking open-ended questions is who, what, when, where, why, how, tell me more about, help me understand, versus tell me how many bedrooms you need, right? So That's the questions we want to steer away from, because you're going to learn a lot more asking open-ended questions. So as we go through these, it's also crucial you listen to the answers. This is your opportunity to listen. To Maggie's point earlier, a lot of times we prepare and we prepare and we prepare and we talk and we talk and we talk. We're going to learn a lot more if we just sit back and listen. So how many properties have you sold? This is going to just tell us right away, have they had experience? What do we need to help them with? And you know what? If they haven't had any, that's great, because good for you, you've got a clean slate, but they're going to base a lot of their experience on in the past. So you're going to want to move on, and you're going to want to also know, well, when did you sell it? Because if they sold it in the same state, they may not have had due diligence. Contingencies may have been around. So listen to their stories when they tell you the answer. What were your experiences with the sale and how did it go for you? This is where you really want to be cautious. We didn't like this because we never heard back. Our realtor only communicated with us at 8 o'clock at night via text message, right? You're going to learn a whole lot of what to do and not to do by listening to their answers. What'd you like best? What'd you like least? Oh, we hated showings. Oh, we didn't like open houses. Whatever it is, you should start working on your entire marketing strategy as they're talking to you. Another one is, what would you like to do? What would you like to do the same or different on this sale? Maybe they didn't take the advice of their realtor before and it sat on the market 60 and 90 days because they didn't put in new paint and new carpet, right? We don't want them to have the same hiccups that they had before that they didn't like. We want them to have a likable experience.
And let me pause here for a second too, and just tell everybody that this is being recorded. We're going to put this on Tate University under most recent webinars, and I'll have a link to this presentation. So if you're scrambling for all of the questions, make notes of your favorites, but we'll also have this presentation for you as well.
I love this one. I love it because I hear people talk all the time. So tell me about a recent experience you've heard in this current market with someone you know who is selling or has sold. So you'll hear, we can't wait to put our house on the market because the neighbor across the street had a line of cars up and down and they were nonstop and they were fighting to get in and all these stories. Well, 2 months ago may not be the same as it is today. So what you've got to start doing is figuring out, you might have to not only set expectations, but you need to reset expectations. All right, because they're going to base it on what they see happen in a neighbor's house that might have been completely updated, remodeled, ready to go, versus one that's dated, dark, and hasn't had anything done with pink carpet in it since 1970.
Oh, this is one of my favorite questions.
You take this one because this is your favorite.
So I love this question. This is one of my overall favorite statements that we can ask people in general. If you could wave a magic wand and have the sale go just the way you want it, what would that look like? The wave the magic wand puts people into a dream state. And you can also, if you've ever asked this question, Amy Overcash, I know you've probably asked this question. When you ask the question, they look off and up. And you can see their eyes moving back and forth. They're actually visualizing what it would look like for them. And this is where you can find the hot buttons. We've already asked a lot of great questions above that are going to find out some of the hot buttons. This is where they are going to tell you what they really want it to be like. What's most important to them, that they know what's happening at all times, or that they're left alone and they just want to find out when they've got an offer. So this is a good one to ask.
And why are you selling their home? I mean, knowing their motivation up front is going to be key, because 6 months ago, you might want to hear, you might have been happy to hear, we just want to test the market. Now you don't want to hear, we just want to test the market and throw out a price and see if it sticks, right? Because we're in that shifting phase. So you want to know what the motivation is to sell. It's also great to know, where are you going? Not only is this a good outgoing referral opportunity, but it'll help understand the motivation too. If they don't have a place to go, they might be a little more hesitant to accept an offer, right? They may be looking for at or over. They may be very nervous. So all this comes into play. And then how soon do you need to be where you're going? So if their goal is to move to Florida and retire and have grandchildren down, how soon do you need to be there? Because if they need to be there in 30, 60, or 90 days, we're going to have to position this house a lot more aggressively than we would if they've got 6 months to a year to build their next home.
When we're talking to our sellers and we're asking these questions, we're also hearing their pain or pleasure in the move. And we need to remember that pain or pleasure, because we're going to need to pull that back out later. So whether it's in this same conversation, to remind them of, if you do this, if you price it or position it here, is that going to get you to your grandkids by Christmas or by the holidays or Thanksgiving or whatever that might be? Or when they start to be a little bit stubborn or unreasonable, or you're just not having an agreement, you can bring back in that pain or pleasure.
And then you got to have a close-ended question, right? You got to ask at a certain point, maybe one yes or no. Are you willing to list your home at a fair market value? Right? Back in the day, the last couple of years, you've always wanted to get that sign in the yard and be first to go at it. As the market shifts a little bit, sometimes it's okay if it sits with another agent first. We say, no, we're not going to be a good match. Right now, I would say don't turn down any listing. We are not to that point yet. But are they willing to list it at a fair market value? Because that's more than just price, right? It's also the condition, the location, what they're willing to do.
So as you're preparing for your next listing consultation, don't review these just in your head and then think you'll remember them. It's important to say these questions out loud. I know sometimes role play is not a lot of fun, but if it can be just you and one other person, you can do it over lunch together. So you and another agent, you're sitting in office, you're like, hey, let's go through some of these. It helps your brain and your muscle memory in your brain to be able to ask these questions. And the other big key is, all of these questions we don't have to have answers for. These are prior learning questions that the seller is answering, which is a lot of fun. So hopefully these questions don't scare you. They should empower you to be able to understand your seller better as you move forward. When you're preparing for your listing consultation, I want you to go back through and review what you're using as what I kind of consider the output, or the way that we're communicating with our seller. It's important to remember that everybody that we work with might have a different behavioral style and learning style. And so therefore, it's not just how we like to be communicated with, but how do they like to be communicated with? So if they are a visual learner and they like to see the visual, they're going to love getting the pre-listing package, which is a package of information in a nice 2-pocket folder that you're dropping off to their home before, so that they can review some of it. And here's the deal. They might like that you just brought them something that's professional. They may not even look through it, or they may sit down for an hour and go through all of that. Think about it from a digital perspective. What are you sitting down with them on your laptop and you having a digital presentation? Moxie Present can do that for you. You can also email that to them after your meeting. I've also heard some agents that are emailing the presentation ahead of time. So if they want to review it, they can. Whatever works for you. And then also, what is your leave behind? So in your pre-listing package, that's going to be about your marketing plan, maybe some of the forms, whereas your leave behind for Moxie Present is going to be more of the CMA pages and any of the positioning or pricing pages that you have talked about with them while you were there. So what is your leave behind? Make a note to go back through what you have. Is it time to do some updates to it? If it was talking about a different type of market, are there any articles that you want to add to it? Anything like that that you can find. I love this page from Moxie Present. So we think about the pricing analysis conversation with our seller. We've also got this one that can be a nice introduction to that. It's price your home right to sell it faster. I taught the location of your house, the value of comparables of properties recently sold, economy, and condition. And let me pause on condition real quick. At the end of the month, we have Mark Bardot. It's going to talk about the giving your seller maximum exposure with how you present your marketing plan and expose their home to the market. So let's put a pin there for the condition of their home, because that is a big part of it. That's a big part of it. So let's go ahead, Katrina, can you start through the macro and to micro conversation about educating the seller on the market?
I will. We get a ton of macro statistics, right? They're coming at us through RISMedias and Inman's and KCM blogs and the general media overall, any news station, a lot of podcasts. They talk on a macro level. So when we talk about a resource that we have, it's FHFA, and we're going to get we're going to go to the FHFA gov house price index. These are on the macro level, and they can tell you increases, appreciation, depreciations by state across the country. It stands for the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So that is big picture. This is the story most consumers are hearing, which is why we need to help them, because sometimes the story that they're hearing is completely different than where we are geographically located. So we want to be really careful that we not only talk about that at a macro level, but maybe you create something that also compares the macro to the micro level within their neighborhood.
And then where they can find this, if you've ever seen any of the home physical discussions we've had before, if you're on Attic and you go to Home Physical, or if you are in Tate University, you can search Home Physical. We have a link, or if you go to Google Drive and you just search Home Physical, the folder is going to come up for Home Physical, and that's where we let this live, because this is a great touch point or addition to your home physical. We keep the most up-to-date house price index. I think the one out right now is from Q2. It just came out. We have it all updated for you. And then Holly Dahl up in our Asheville Mountain region, she helps out a lot. And she has additional regional branded pages. So with more information than you may have seen before. If you haven't been in the Home Physical folder recently, then be sure to go check it out and look at the regional stuff that she provides as well. All right,
this was my baby. No, this is what, if you guys were on a Tate Talk maybe a month or two ago, Tony Jarrett and I really dove deep into the 5 stats your sellers should know. And if you've been in a Winner's Edge training lately, this is our focus where we really took a deep dive. So we're just going to run through those really quickly, because we do want you to come armed with these when you're talking to a seller. The first one is the days on market, because these are going to all play parts on where you position the home. So it's days on market and month supply of inventory. Otherwise, you'll see that as MSI, the acronym MSI, and that is month over month, how many houses sell. So how long would it take to get rid of our existing inventory today as it sits if no more houses came on the market? That is your month supply of inventory. And then we would move on to the number of showings, which is always important, because a good indicator is we are seeing a lot of houses now in the shifting market get a ton of showings and no offers. And sellers are getting very frustrated. So if you start to hear the conversations, it's usually an indicator of the price or the condition, because again, it's not a good time right now to try out the market, to just test it out. So the number of showings is key. And you also want to take a look at the list price to the closed price ratio. And that's actually the list price of when it was originally listed versus where it closed, not after any price corrections or adjustments have been made. And then last but not least, appreciation or depreciation. So right now, fortunately, we're not going to be in a mode where the second half of that number 5 is going to come into play much. Not a lot of depreciation is forecasted by anybody at this point, but it will be a slowdown or a deceleration in appreciation. And that's just important, because we're not going to see 20% and 30% gains year over year. It's going to slow, but it's still going to be on the positive.
Always remember, a slowing in appreciation does not mean depreciation. And we have to be careful with the headlines that we read, because they can certainly make us think that the sky is falling. I want to take a look, Katrina, and zoom in a little bit more. I talked about how trends are amazing. And if you go through these last 5 stats, I would kind of challenge you to run these 5 stats on the zip code that you work in most, and do it every month. Just as your own knowledge. You could probably do it on a weekly basis, but for your own knowledge, that's going to keep you as a market expert. As Katrina was talking through it, I was thinking about, oh my gosh, imagine the difference that we might see in month supply of inventory from one month to the next. What a conversation piece that is if you're at a dinner party or anything like that, or a number of showings when you're talking to your seller. So maybe that's something that you could add to your monthly activities that you do.
And I think, well, and also just for the math geeks, I know I don't want to go too deep down, but it may not look like a lot if your days on market, let's say, shifted 2 days and went from 5 days to 7 days. But if you look at a percentage, that's a 40% increase in your days on market, right? So you really want to think in percentages. 2 days doesn't seem like a lot of extra days, but it could be depending on what the prior number was.
That's good. So we not only want to look at those statistics and not just the typical CMA, let's also see what buyers and sellers are doing right now in the market. And the best way we can do that is by looking in the last 30 days. Looking in the last 30 days, it means that you're in your MLS. And when I do this, I like to suggest that you're not zooming so far in on the criteria for their home. Pick a good range of price, maybe within the zip code, so that you can go in and start to get an idea of what are buyers doing in the market, what are sellers doing in the market, and here's some suggestions. Take a look at active properties right now, and you may even have your MLS pulled up, and you've done this prior to the meeting so that you know what to expect as you look at it. Pull your MLS up and put in some of that basic criteria, look at active properties, and start to see how many are in their price range and type. That could potentially be their competition. I remember 6 months ago when we would do this exercise, there would be 10 coming soon and 5 active properties. Now it can look a lot different depending on where you are. It helps them to visually see the number of homes that might be their competition. What are our average days on market right now for active properties? This means that they've been on the market presenting themselves to buyers and they're not yet under contract. So that can help for them to start to see, oh, wait, we may not be 2 days. We're seeing homes that are 15, 20, 25. Now, what about those properties with price reductions? Can we see where their original list price is to where they are right now? A great indicator, especially if they have longer days on market. Why don't we go look at that history and see if they have already reduced the price? And then don't forget to look at the history. The history is going to show you maybe it had been on the market previously with another agent or in another listing. And it can also show some of the changes that they've made as far as price reductions are concerned.
And these are really important numbers to tie back to some of the answers you get from those questions at the beginning, right? Because if their goals are that they have to be somewhere quickly, then we better look at what our average days on market is. Let's look at what our price is, because if there's a direct correlation to an increased number of days on market for some of the higher priced homes, we know if they want to move it quickly, right, we're going to have to align those. We're going to have to be more, in that middle to low range of what the competition is versus the upper end to get theirs sold quickly.
And when you've gone through this, you're not, I would say that as you're looking at it, you're doing it as more of a curious onlooker. Oh, wow, look at that home. It's been on the market for 30 days. Let's go see why, right? So you're engaging. Can you imagine this? And then everybody kind of leans in to look at it. And then after you've done that exercise, you ask the question, so Amy, based on looking at this, what are you seeing is happening right now with active properties? And Amy's going to say, well, I'm surprised that how many have been on the market for 20 days or more. I'm surprised that we're seeing so many price reductions. Or here's the thing, remember what we said at the beginning, be careful of the story that you're telling. Maybe we look at it for their particular market and it's not what we expect. So this is great for them to tell you what they see. Talking about under contract, you're going to use the same criteria, but change it for anything under contract. How many days did it take for them to get under contract? What is the average days on market to contract? That's what our seller, they want to be able to be within that time frame right now. So when they go on market, we need to be under contract under that number of the average days on market. If we start to go over, we're an outlier on the wrong side of the line. So look at that average days on market to contract. And if it was longer, I mentioned this a little bit on the active side, it's the same true for under contract. If it was a little bit longer, did they have a price reduction? And this is where you start to have the conversation with the seller. Do you see what happens if you do not position the home correctly in the beginning? The longer it's on, the more you're going to reducing. So we want to have a compelling price up front so that you position your home to sell under the average days on market. Again, don't forget to look at the history of the property so you can see the changes that have happening, or if it had been on the market prior to that. Anything else, Kat, you want to add to under contract?
The only thing I'd like to add is when you do a history search, please don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call the agent. So if you see that something went under contract and came back on the market active again, pick it up and find out why. Right? What happened with it? They might tell you everything. They may tell you nothing. But that way, when you're talking to the seller and they say, well, I wonder what happened, you can say, well, actually, contacted the listing agent and here's what I was told. And then you've really done a lot of homework that is going to be hopefully impressive. And it's only going to help you be better at what you're doing in order to help them get theirs sold.
Another thing, and this is touching a little bit into Mark's conversation, when you have longer days on market, why don't we go look at the inside of the home? So pull up the pictures, and that's where sometimes it can help you with the condition conversation. Wow, this home is in a difficult location and they tried to price it too high, or it needed a full update. That starts to tell the story as well. And then don't forget to look at closed properties in the last 30 days as well. So under contracts, what's under contract right now, actives, what's active right now. When it comes to the closed properties, let's look in our MLS right now at what's closed in the last 30 days. This is not about doing a CMA comparison. This is about seeing the trend of what's happening right now so that they can tell you what they're seeing. So we want to see what was that list versus closed price. And Katrina mentioned this earlier. Don't forget to look at the history to get the true original list price, because it could show 100%. But maybe it was originally listed quite a bit higher. They dropped it, they did a price reduction, and it sold. That's important for them to see. The other things that you always want to pay attention to is that if it was an off-market sale, so if it was a firm exclusive, it should show what the original requested price was, but they may not always do it. So it might be list and closed are the same, and then new construction is a little bit different. And so pay attention to that as you're looking at those comparisons. Of course, list versus closed price relative to the days on market. If it went under contract and under, I always consider 7 to 8 days. That really means first 4-day activity. What is that closed price to list price compared to the home that had been on the market for 25 days? Bring that up and go, oh, wow, look at that. This home was on the market for 25 days. Oof. And it sold at 95% of the list price. That's interesting. And then after you're done with it, you ask that same question that you did for active and under contract is, well, this was interesting to look at. Based on what we looked at for the closed homes, how would you describe what's happening in the market as close to right now as possible? They should be able to tell you what you actually just looked at. And it's going to give you a good indication if they are understanding and getting it. So after you've gone through, you've prepared, you've come and you've given them the information, you've educated them by showing them and not just telling them. Trust me, this is what's happening and this is what you need to do, right? So we're going to show them and not just tell them. Looking at a macro level using the FHFA.gov, zooming in with the 5 stats, and let's zoom in even more on time for the active, under contract, and close. And then, of course, doing the standard CMA comparables. We didn't even put that in here, which is funny as I'm talking about it now, Katrina. We didn't put that here. That's a given. We're going to go through that and really look at, that's the final zoom in of looking at their comparables of what's recently happened compared to them and their current competition compared to them. Anything else you want to add before we go to the big question?
No, I don't think so. I think we just need to touch on words are very important, right? Because you can emotionally connect with somebody or emotionally disconnect them from a conversation. So Maggie and I have learned a lot. I mean, have used the word position a lot today over price, because all of these are going to factor into where you position the home. That's why if you've got an active list of, let's say, 15 homes, and some are sitting on the market, these are sitting on the market 30 days. Do we really want to position our property up here, or do we want to position it more to the middle to the low into that fair market price range? So position is key. And also, we could get into the minutia with using property or residence versus home and house where the memories are made, right? So that that's not a constant that the sellers are thinking about, but your words are key. So just be careful what you use. And that's why the role play Maggie mentioned earlier can be so important. Even if it's you looking in a mirror, you recording yourself, hearing how it comes off, because it'll make a difference.
Good. So we've gone through all of this process. We've had the conversation with the seller. If you've done the good job of educating them on the market, we should be able to ask this question. Based on the current market conditions that we've just looked at, where do you feel you should position your house to get you to the grandchildren by Thanksgiving? And you fill in the blank, you bring back and you tie back in that pain or pleasure that they're trying to get to. Based on that, where do you feel that you should position your house? And a question that I love is if they want to say, we want to test the market, go ahead and ask the question. Tell me more about that. What are you wanting to accomplish? And then the question is, if you present your home to the market at that price, remember, we're wanting to test a little bit. Do you believe it's really going to get you to the grandchildren by Thanksgiving? They're having to ask themselves, is this the game I'm playing? Am I trying to play the market with something that is such a big deal? Such a big deal. And then Katrina, what's the last question?
If the property is on the market for X number of days, whatever that average days on market is, and Maggie's probably right on with anywhere from 7 to 8, I think industry is about 21, and it hasn't received any offers, what do you feel should be the next step? Some of them might say, well, then we'll be ready to take it off and put paint and carpet in. Some may say, well, we're going to be ready to make a price adjustment, a price correction. So listen to that answer. We essentially want them to get to the point of, if they've chosen a price and it might be slightly inflated, that we're setting the expectation that if we're on for that number of days, we're going to have to do something one way or the other, right? Get their mindset right. It's either going to be a price reduction. We got to do something with the condition of it. We've got to get the professional photographer out here. I know you told us to take iPhone pictures, whatever it is. So it could be a plethora of responses, but make sure you ask it.
Now let's stop here for a second. We're going to do kind of a wrap up of big pointers and takeaways. Does anybody have any questions right now? Anybody have any questions that have come up or questions that you have from this so far? I just want to put it out there. I'm not seeing any faces. I'm not seeing any hands raised. And so if you think
I want to say something, and this just hit me. I can't remember where I heard it, but in one of our learning sessions, someone made the suggestion, when you're sitting with your sellers and maybe they don't agree, you know, where the price or where to position the home on the market, and they want to put it higher because of the past 90 days. Someone made a suggestion, well, at that point say, okay, we'll go ahead and do this. We'll position the house on the market where you want to, but I'm going to take out an addendum, and this is for 30 days. If the house is not under contract in 30 days, we're going to make a price adjustment of this. Have them go ahead and sign it. And that shows this was their idea to put the price where it is, but this is your idea of maybe psychologically where it really needs to be, and go ahead and get them to sign it. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, I've heard of agents doing that, and it can really work. It can really work. Yeah. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Could we have a situation sometimes where a seller is lower than what we think they should be? Could we have that sometimes where they're like, oh, wow, that's more. Even today, oh, that's more than what we thought it was going to be. Absolutely. That could still be the case. And then we can counsel them and we get to bring the good news. We get to bring the good news. Excellent. Any other questions or comments here? Branch leaders, do you have anything? See, some of you are on. Okay, so we have a wrap up for you. Katrina, I'm going to give you this. We're going to go through these last pointers here. Here are the takeaways that we really want to leave you with. Please, please, please. It is so much better to over prepare when it comes to knowing the numbers and doing the research and riding the neighborhoods, go out, look for new construction, review the comparables as much as possible, get in and do the last 30 days, sit and not only pull those trends, but sit and study them. As you over prepare, it's going to increase your confidence and your competence. Right? You're increasing your knowledge about that area. And by doing so, it will change your confidence. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then it helps you to know your stuff. You need to be able to answer the questions with your seller. And of course, if there's a question that we can't answer, then you can say, that's a great question. And I'll come back to you with that answer. But with the know your stuff, if you can over prepare and really know the detail, and then you can answer those questions, and it's really going to show you as the trusted advisor. Katrina, you take this one.
And then it's about positioning the home, right? We've got to take into consideration more than what the neighbor said they sold their house for down the street. And that all comes with what Maggie just said, with your preparation and with knowing all of your stuff, right? You've got to select that price, and then you've got to choose. How does it chalk up at that price compared to the condition, location, all the factors of the other houses? So it has a lot more to do with the surrounding information than just what the numbers are once you make adjustments.
Ooh, this
And
is
the
yours
favorite.
too.
I know, it's my favorite. Asking open-ended questions. I love it. And just listen. More importantly than asking, I mean, the questions are very important that you ask, but you've got to listen to the answers and then formulate a plan moving forward that is going to fit your seller's needs the best to get them exactly what they want at the end of the day, so that they rave about you. You need those raving fans, right?
Absolutely. So good. Well, the purpose of the day was not to get into numbers and pluses and minuses, but really, what is the conversation that we're having with our sellers? What are the questions that we're asking? Do we really understand what their pain and their pleasure? Based on that, we can give them options with our Allentate advantage of what their options are and guide them through the process. We can educate them on the market and then guide them through the positioning of their home for the market. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have a conversation with Mark Bordeaux, and he's really going to talk about the marketing side, how to prepare their home so that they're in the right position, how to explain the marketing plan of what you're going to do to give them maximum exposure. But first, next week, we have Stephanie Gossett. And next Wednesday at 1 o'clock, Stephanie Gossett has 4 of our branch leaders on, and she has a panel to really talk through pause, Maggie, let me go back and say it again. It's been a while since, that's the name of her session. Stephanie, sorry, I got that wrong. It's been a while since, ... It's been a while since I wrote a contingent offer or received a contingent offer, or that I needed to do a price reduction. I heard a branch leader say, I had an agent come and said, I didn't even know there was a price reduction form. And so what are the things that you haven't done in a while? And you want to make sure that you're hearing the latest of what our branch leaders are hearing from you all in their offices. So Carol, I heard that you're going to be there. Fantastic. That's exciting. And Stephanie Gossett, I think we have Clay Bassey, we've got Elaine and Beverly Foster. Fantastic. So really looking forward to have everybody on next week at 1 o'clock. This is recorded. It'll be on Tate University, and it'll be in Rise next Thursday. So have a great afternoon. Katrina Richards, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for
appreciate it.
spending your time with us.
Okay. See you all. Have a great afternoon.